I restore myself when I'm alone. Marilyn Monroe. I'm selfish, impatient, and a little insecure. I make mistakes. I'm out of control, and at times hard to handle. But if you can't handle me at my worst, then you sure as hell don't deserve me at my best. Give a girl the right shoes, and she can conquer the world. Success makes so many people hate you. I wish it wasn't that way. It would be wonderful to enjoy success without seeing envy in the eyes of those around you. Marilyn Monroe. Sex is a part of nature. I go along with nature. I am good, but not an angel. I do sin, but I am not the devil. I am just a small girl in a big world trying to find someone to love. Imperfection is beauty. Madness is genius, and it's better to be absolutely ridiculous than absolutely boring. If you can make a girl laugh, you can make her do anything. We are all of us stars, and we deserve to twinkle. I think that sexuality is only attractive when it's natural and spontaneous. A strong man doesn't have to be dominant toward a woman. He doesn't match his strength against a woman weak with love for him. He matches it against the world. Marilyn Monroe. Fear is stupid. So are regrets. It's better to be unhappy alone than unhappy with someone. So far, I don't know who invented high heels, but all women owe him a lot. I don't mind living in a man's world as long as I can be a woman in it. If I'd observed all the rules, I'd never have got anywhere. Sometimes I feel my whole life has been one big rejection. Beauty and femininity are ageless and can't be contrived. And glamour, although the manufacturers won't like this, cannot be manufactured. Not real glamour. It's based on femininity. Marilyn Monroe. The real lover is the man who can thrill you just by touching your head or smiling into your eyes, or just by staring into space. Respect is one of life's greatest treasures. I mean, what does it all add up to if you don't have that? I don't want to make money. I just want to be wonderful. A woman knows by intuition or instinct what is best for herself. I have feelings too. I am still human. All I want is to be loved for myself and for my talent. Fame is like caviar. You know, it's good to have caviar, but not when you have it at every meal. Experts on romance say for a happy marriage, there has to be more than a passionate love. For a lasting union, they insist, there must be a genuine liking for each other, which, in my book, is a good definition for friendship. I knew I belonged to the public and to the world, not because I was talented or even beautiful, but because I had never belonged to anything or anyone else. Marilyn Monroe. I know I will never be happy, but I know I can be gay. Marilyn Monroe. It's not true. I had nothing on. I had the radio on. A smart girl leaves before she is left. Marilyn Monroe. I am alone. I am always alone. No matter what. It's all make-believe, isn't it? One of the best things that ever happened to me is that I'm a woman. That is the way all females should feel. Arthur Miller wouldn't have married me if I had been nothing but a dumb blonde. What do I wear in bed? Why, Chanel No. 5. Of course. Sometimes wearing a scarf and a polo coat and no makeup, and with a certain attitude of walking. I go shopping or just look at people living. But then, you know, there will be a few teenagers who are kind of sharp, and they'll say, "Hey, just a minute. You know who I think that is?" And they'll start tailing me, and I don't mind. Marilyn Monroe. Designers want me to dress like spring in billowing things. I don't feel like spring. I feel like a warm red autumn. Being a sex symbol is a heavy load to carry, especially when one is tired, hurt, and bewildered. I don't mind making jokes, but I don't want to look like one. Fame will go by, and So long. I've had you. Fame. If it goes by. I've always known. It was fickle. So at least it's something. I experience. But that's not. Where I live. Sometimes. I've been to. A party where. No one spoke. To me. For a whole evening. The men. Frightened. By their wives. Or sweeties. Would give me. A wide berth. And the ladies. Would gang. Up in a corner. To discuss. My dangerous character. I like to feel. Blonde all over. The nicest thing. For me is sleep. Then at least. I can dream. The body is meant. To be seen. Not all. Covered up. A career. Is wonderful. But you can't curl. Up with it. On a cold night. We should all start. To live before. We get too old. Fame is fickle. And I know it. It has its compensations, but it also has its drawbacks. And I've experienced them both. A career is born in public. Talent in privacy. No one ever told me I was pretty when I was a little girl. All little girls should be told they're pretty, even if they aren't. I am not a victim of emotional conflicts. I am human. I've been on a calendar, but I've never been on time. If there is only one thing in my life that I am proud of, it's that I've never been a kept woman. The truth is, I've never fooled anyone. I've let men sometimes fool themselves. Some of my foster families used to send me to the movies to get me out of the house, and there I'd sit all day and way into the night, up in front, there with the screen so big, a little kid, all alone. And I loved it. I loved anything that moved up there. And I didn't miss anything that happened. And there was no popcorn either. Marilyn Monroe, dogs never bite me. Just humans. Fame doesn't fulfill you. It warms you a bit. But that warmth is temporary. Marilyn Monroe. I used to think, as I looked out on the Hollywood night, there must be thousands of girls sitting alone, like me, dreaming of being a movie star. But I'm not going to worry about them. I'm dreaming the hardest. Marilyn Monroe. Sometimes I think it would be easier to avoid old age, to die young. But then you'd never complete your life, would you? You'd never wholly know you. I have too many fantasies to be a housewife. I guess I am a fantasy. What I really want to say, that what the world really needs is a real feeling of kinship. Everybody. Stars. Laborers. Negroes. Jews. Arabs. We are all brothers. I'm very definitely a woman. And I enjoy it. I am trying to find myself. Sometimes that's not easy. It's not too much fun to know yourself too well, or think you do. Everyone needs a little conceit to carry them through and past the falls. Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. The thing I want more than anything else? I want to have children. I used to feel for every child I had, I would adopt another. Before marriage, a girl has to make love to a man to hold him. After marriage, she has to hold him to make love to him. We human beings are strange creatures, and still reserve the right to think for ourselves. If I'm a star, then the people made me a star. It's nice to be included in people's fantasies, but you also like to be accepted for your own sake. There was my name up in lights. I said, God, somebody's made a mistake. But there it was in lights. And I sat there and said, remember, you're not a star. Yet there it was, up in lights. All my stepchildren carried the burden of my fame. Sometimes they would read terrible things about me, and I'd worry about whether it would hurt them. I would tell them, don't hide these things from me. I'd rather you ask me these things straight out, and I'll answer all your questions. Marilyn Monroe. I defy gravity. Depending upon my activities, I sleep between 5 and 10 hours every night. I sleep in an extra wide single bed and I use only one heavy down comforter over me. Summer or winter, I have never been able to wear pajamas or creepy nightgowns. They disturb my sleep. Marilyn Monroe, a sex symbol, becomes a thing. I just hate to be a thing. A man has a tendency to accept you the way you are, while most women immediately start to pick flaws and want to change you. It's often just enough to be with someone. I don't need to touch them, not even talk. A feeling passes between you both. You're not alone. Men who think that a woman's past love affairs lessen her love for them are usually stupid and weak. I don't want everybody to see exactly where I live, what my sofa or my fireplace looks like. Marilyn Monroe. I am invariably late for appointments, sometimes as much as 2 hours. I've tried to change my ways, but the things that make me late are too strong and too pleasing. Marilyn Monroe. The public scares me, but people I trust. I guess I have always been deeply terrified to really be someone's wife, since I know from life one cannot love another ever. Really. Men are so willing to respect anything that bores them. Friends accept you the way you are. I never wanted to be Marilyn. It just happened. Marilyn's like a veil I wear over Norma Jean. Creativity has got to start with humanity, and when you're a human being, you feel, you suffer, you're gay, you're sick, you're nervous or whatever. Marilyn Monroe. Having a child. That's always been my biggest fear. I want a child and I fear a child. Naturally. There are times when every woman likes to be flattered, to feel she is the most important thing in someone's world. Only a man can paint this picture. Marilyn Monroe. When it comes to gossip, I have to readily admit men are as guilty as women. I remember when I was in high school, I didn't have a new dress for each special occasion. The girls would bring the fact to my attention, not always too delicately. The boys, however, never bothered with the subject. They were my friends, not because of the size of my wardrobe, but because they liked me. There is a need for aloneness, which I don't think most people realize for an actor. It's almost having certain kinds of secrets for yourself that you'll let the whole world in on only for a moment when you're acting. But everybody is always tugging at you. They'd all like sort of a chunk of you. I was honored when they asked me to appear at the president's birthday rally in Madison Square Garden. There was like a hush over the whole place when I came on to sing happy birthday. Like if I had been wearing a slip, I would have thought it was showing or something. I thought, oh my gosh, what if no sound comes out? Marilyn Monroe. I think I have always had a little humor. I have never cared, especially for outdoor sports, and have no desire to excel at tennis, swimming, or golf. I'll leave those things to the men next to Madge, husband, and along with Marlon Brando. I think that Yves Montand is the most attractive man I've ever met. Consider the fellow. He never spends his time telling you about his previous night's date. You get the idea he has eyes only for you and wouldn't think of looking at another woman. My dinners at home are startlingly simple. Every night, I stop at the market near my hotel and pick up a steak, lamb chops or some liver, which I broil in the electric oven in my room. I usually eat 4 or 5 raw carrots with my meat, and that is all. I must be part rabbit. I never get bored with raw carrots. Marilyn Monroe. A woman can't be alone. She needs a man. A man and a woman support and strengthen each other. She just can't do it by herself. Marilyn Monroe. For a long time, I was scared I'd find out I was like my mother. I am involved in a freedom ride, protesting the loss of the minority rights belonging to the few remaining earthbound stars. All we demanded was our right to twinkle. It is wonderful to have Someone praise you. To be desired. When I was 5. I think. That's when I started wanting to be an actress. I loved to play. I didn't like the world around me because it was kind of grim. But I loved to play house. It was like you could make your own boundaries. Marilyn Monroe. An actress is not a machine. But they treat you like a machine. A money machine. I've never dropped anyone I believed in. A woman can bring a new love to each man she loves. Providing there are not too many. Millions of people live their entire lives without finding themselves. But it is something I must do. The fact is that I find most men are more open, more generous, and much more stimulating than the majority of females I know. Black men don't like to be called boys, but women accept being called girls. An actor is supposed to be a sensitive instrument. Isaac Stern takes good care of his violin. What if everybody jumped on his violin? Husbands are chiefly good as lovers when they are betraying their wives. I read poetry to save time. Like any creative human being, I would like a bit more control, so that it would be a little easier for me. When the director says, "one tear," right now, that one tear would pop out. I have noticed that men usually leave married women alone and are inclined to treat all wives with respect. This is no great credit to married women. There is just no comparison between having a dinner date with a man and staying home playing canasta with the girls. I want to be an artist, not a celluloid aphrodisiac. I want to grow old without facelifts. I want to have the courage to be loyal to the face I have made. The trouble with censors is that they worry. If a girl has cleavage, they ought to worry. If she hasn't any. I learned to walk as a baby, and I haven't had a lesson since. Confidentially, the type of male I find most enjoyable for a friend is one who has enough fire and assurance to speak up for his convictions. Nothing's ever easy as long as you go on living. I don't know if high society is different in other cities, but in Hollywood, important people can't stand to be invited someplace that isn't full of other important people. They don't mind a few unfamous people being present because they make good listeners. Marilyn Monroe. I don't digest things with my mind. Marilyn Monroe. The public doesn't mind people living together without being married, providing they don't overdo it. Fame may go by in so long. I've had you. In Hollywood, a girl's virtue is much less important than her hairdo. I'm one of the world's most self-conscious people. I really have to struggle. If your man is a sports enthusiast, you may have to resign yourself to his spouting off in a monotone on a prize fight, football game or pennant race. I don't look at myself as a commodity, but I'm sure a lot of people have. I think one of the basic reasons men make good friends is that they can make up their minds quickly. If you spend your life competing with businessmen, what do you have? A bank account and ulcers. I think that when you are famous, every weakness is exaggerated. With fame, you know, you can read about yourself, somebody else's ideas about you. But what's important is how you feel about yourself for survival and living day to day with what comes up. Marilyn Monroe. You know, most people really don't know me. I often wake up in the night, and I like to have something to think about. If I close my eyes and think of Hollywood, all I see is one big varicose vein. First, I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm a person. Then maybe I'll convince myself that I'm an actress. Girdles and wire stays should have never been invented. No man wants to hug a padded bird cage. When I was 11, the whole world was close to me. I just felt I was on the outside of the world. There isn't anybody that looks like me without clothes on. I don't consider myself an intellectual, and this is not one of my aims. But I admire intellectual people. What's the good of drawing in the next breath If all you do is let it out and draw in another, how do I know about a man's needs for a sex symbol? I'm a girl. In fact, my popularity seems almost entirely a masculine phenomenon. I won't be satisfied until people want to hear me sing without looking at me. Of course, that doesn't mean I want them to stop looking. There are many times when a woman will ask another girl friend how she likes her new hat. She will reply, "Fine," but slap her hand to her forehead the minute the girl leaves to yip. What a horror. Marilyn Monroe. When I was a youngster, I lived with different families. I nearly always felt closer to the man of the house. Maybe because I always dreamed of having a father of my own. I have evolved my own exercises for the muscles I wish to keep firm, and I know they are right for me because I can feel them putting the proper muscles into play as I exercise. What good is it being Marilyn Monroe? Why can't I just be an ordinary woman? Marilyn Monroe. Of course, it does depend on the people, but sometimes I'm invited places to kind of brighten up a dinner table, like a musician who will play the piano after dinner, and I know you're not really invited for yourself. You're just an ornament. Marilyn Monroe. What good? I can't have kids. I can't cook. I've been divorced 3 times. Who would want me? Marriage destroyed my relationship with 2 wonderful men. Girls shouldn't worry about being the equal of men in the business world. I want to be an artist, an actress with integrity, and that includes all kinds of parts. Dreaming about being an actress is more exciting than being one. The working men I'll go by and they'll whistle. At first they whistle because they think, oh, it's a girl. She's got blonde hair. And she's not out of shape. And then they say, gosh, it's Marilyn Monroe. I've always felt toward the slightest scene, even if all I had to do in a scene was just to come in and say hi, that the people ought to get their money's worth, and that this is an obligation of mine to give them the best you can get from me. Marilyn Monroe. Someday I want to have children and give them all the love I never had. I was brought up differently than the average American child, because the average child is brought up expecting to be happy. At 12, I looked like a girl of 17. My body was developed and shapely. I still wore the blue dress and the blouse the orphanage provided. They made me look like an overgrown lummox. I want the world to see my body. I myself would like to become more disciplined within my work. My work is the only ground I've ever had to stand on. To put it bluntly, I seem to have a whole superstructure with no foundation. But I'm working on the foundation. I love a natural look in pictures. I have been told my eating habits are absolutely bizarre, but I don't think so. I've always wanted a baby. If a star or studio chief or any other great movie personages find themselves sitting among a lot of nobodies, they get frightened, as if somebody was trying to demote them. Marilyn Monroe. A man makes you feel important, makes you glad you are a woman. Someone said to me, if 50% of the experts in Hollywood said you had no talent and should give up, what would you do? My answer was then, and still is, if 100% told me that, all 100% would be wrong. Marilyn Monroe. A man is more frank and sincere with his emotions than a woman. We girls, I'm afraid, have a tendency to hide our feelings. My public is growing up just as I am. After all, I'm not 19 anymore, and if I stick with the sex bit, who will be paying to see me when I'm 50? Marilyn Monroe. An actor is supposed to be A sensitive instrument. Marilyn Monroe. I'll think I have a few wonderful friends. And all of a sudden, ooh, here it comes. They do a lot of things. They talk about you to the press, to their friends, tell stories. And you know, it's disappointing. I once wanted to prove myself by being a great actress. Now I want to prove that I'm a person. Then maybe I'll be a great actress. When Clark Gable died, I cried for 2 days straight. I couldn't eat or sleep. I always have a full-length mirror next to the camera when I'm doing publicity stills. That way, I know how I look. I'm looking forward to becoming a marvelous, excuse the word marvelous, character actress. Like Marie Dressler. Like Will Rogers. I enjoy acting when you really hit it right. Only the public can make a star. It's the studios who try to make a system out of it. I've found men are less likely to let petty things annoy them. Why is it you always meet people when you look your worst? I like actors very much. But to marry one would be like marrying your brother. You look too much like in the mirror. I have always had a talent for irritating women since I was 14. I used to get the feeling, and sometimes I still get it, that sometimes I was fooling somebody. I don't know who or what. Maybe myself. I just got to feel that whoever I marry has some real regard for me. When I was 5, I think. That's when I started wanting to be an actress. I wish I knew why. I am so anguished. I've often stood silent at a party for hours listening to my movie idols turn into dull and little people. Marilyn Monroe. To put it bluntly, I seem to have a whole superstructure with no foundation. But I'm working on the foundation. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe.